João parked his car in the driveway, the familiar sound of the engine sputtering to a stop bringing a comforting sense of home. He stepped out, the late afternoon sun casting a warm glow over the quaint suburban neighborhood. The scent of blooming jasmine wafted through the air, mingling with the laughter of children playing nearby. As he walked to the front door, he could hear the cheerful chatter of his 4 children inside, their voices rising and falling like a delightful melody. Pushing the door open, he was greeted by a chorus of "Papaya!" The moment was sweet, a routine that filled him with a profound sense of fulfillment. His youngest, Sophia, rushed to him, her little arms wrapping around his waist. "Daddy, guess what? I learned a new song today," she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "That's wonderful, my little star. Can you sing it for me?" João knelt down, ruffling her hair affectionately. "Yeah. It goes like this," she began, her voice sweet and melodic, filling the living room with innocent joy. João watched her, feeling a swell of pride in his heart. His children were his world, and he cherished every moment with them. As he settled into the living room, Maria emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Welcome home, love," she said, her smile warm but with a hint of something unspoken in her eyes. João noticed a fleeting shadow cross her face, but before he could dwell on it, she leaned in to kiss him. The kiss was soft yet lingering, grounding him in their shared life. "Dinner will be ready in a bit. I made your favorite," she added, a hint of enthusiasm returning to her voice. João nodded, his heart swelling with affection for the woman who had been his partner through thick and thin. However, the atmosphere shifted abruptly when Maria's phone rang, breaking the moment. She glanced at the screen, her expression shifting from delight to concern as she answered. "Hello?" she said quietly, stepping away from João and the children. João strained to catch snippets of her conversation. The tone of her voice changed, the lightness replaced by tension. "No, I didn't expect—" "Yes, I understand. I'll think about it." She ended the call, her face pale, and João could see the weight of the conversation pressing down on her. "Everything okay?" he asked, a knot forming in his stomach. Maria hesitated, her gaze drifting to the floor. "Just some work stuff, nothing to worry about," she replied, but her voice lacked conviction. "Are you sure? You look different," he probed gently, concern etched on his face. "I'm fine, really," she insisted, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. João felt a flicker of unease but chose to let it go for now. He didn't want to ruin the evening. As they gathered around the dinner table, the conversation flowed easily at first, filled with anecdotes from school and playful banter. Yet, when the topic of family ancestry came up, sparked by the children's school project, tension crackled in the air. "Daddy, do you think we have any famous ancestors?" Miguel, the oldest, asked, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Maybe we're descendants of kings." Sophia chimed in, her eyes wide with imagination. João chuckled, or explorers who discovered new lands. But as he spoke, he couldn't shake the feeling that the children didn't quite resemble him. He glanced at Maria, who was listening intently, her expression unreadable. "Let's see if we trace back our lineage," João began, but a sudden thought struck him. "Why don't we do a family tree? It could be fun." Maria's smile faltered for just a moment before she nodded. "That sounds like a great idea, João." But João caught her looking down at her plate, her fork picking at the food absent-mindedly. The laughter faded a bit, replaced by an undercurrent of tension that he couldn't quite place. He tried to shake off the feeling, focusing on his children's enthusiasm as they discussed the project, but the unease lingered, wrapping around him like a thick fog. After dinner, as the children scampered off to play, João found himself alone with Maria once more. He opened his mouth to ask about the phone call, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he watched her, his heart heavy with unspoken questions, while the laughter of their children echoed in the background, unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect family life. Joao stood at the entrance of the sprawling family estate, the sounds of laughter and chatter echoing from within. The annual family reunion was supposed to be a joyful occasion, a chance to reconnect with relatives he seldom saw. Yet, an unsettling weight pressed down on his chest as he stepped inside, the warm embrace of familiarity mingling with an undercurrent of anxiety. He greeted his relatives with feigned enthusiasm, shaking hands and exchanging smiles, but his mind was elsewhere, consumed by the nagging doubts that had begun to take root since that fateful dinner. As he moved through the crowd, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It was during a lull in the festivities, while he was helping himself to some refreshments, that a distant cousin approached him. Her name was Anna, a woman he barely recognized, but who sported a knowing smile that made him uneasy. "Joao," she began, her tone casual yet probing, "it's so good to see you. How are the kids? They must be growing up so fast." "They are," he replied, forcing a smile. "Growing like weeds." Anna's smile faded slightly, her eyes narrowing as if she were weighing her next words carefully. "You know, it's funny. I was just talking to some of the older relatives about family traits. They were saying how your kids don't quite resemble you, do they?" Joao felt his stomach drop. "What do you mean?" He tried to sound casual, but his voice cracked slightly. "Oh, you know how it is. Genetics can be a funny thing. Sometimes, children take more after their mothers. I've seen it in our family," she continued, her tone light, but there was an edge to her words that felt like a warning. "Right?" he managed, the knot in his stomach tightening. "Well, they certainly have Maria's smile." Anna chuckled, but Joao could sense the deeper implications lurking beneath her laughter. "Just make sure you have a chat with Maria about the family history. There are always stories that get lost along the way." Feeling the heat rise in his cheeks, Joao excused himself, a rush of confusion and anger coursing through him. Why would she say such a thing? Had Maria known something he didn't? The thought spiraled through his mind as he made his way outside, seeking a breath of fresh air to quell the rising tide of anxiety. Later that night, as the festivities wound down and relatives began to say their goodbyes, Joao returned home to find the house quiet. The children were asleep, their soft breaths echoing in the stillness. He found Maria in their bedroom, her back turned to him, the silhouette of her shoulders trembling slightly. "Maria?" he called softly, concern creeping into his voice. She turned, and he was taken aback by the tears glistening in her eyes. "Joao, she began, her voice breaking. "I need to talk to you." His heart raced as he approached her. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I didn't want to keep this from you," she hesitated, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "But I've been carrying a secret for a long time. Just tell me, Maria, please." The urgency in his voice was palpable. She sighed deeply, the weight of her words hanging in the air. "It's about the kids. There's something you need to know, something I should have told you a long time ago. Just say it. What is it?" His impatience bubbled to the surface, mingling with fear. I didn't mean for it to happen this way. I thought it was best for our family. But," her voice trailed off as she looked away, tears streaming down her face. "Best for our family? What are you talking about?" Joao felt a cold wave of dread wash over him. "Maria, please." Finally, she met his gaze, her eyes filled with sorrow. "I had a moment of weakness. There was a time when we were apart, and I made a choice that I thought was right. I just didn't want you to suffer." Joao's heart raced faster, the implications of her words piercing through his thoughts. "What did you do?" he demanded, his voice a mix of disbelief and desperation. "I didn't want to lose our family, Joao. I thought about us. I thought about the children." She broke down, her sobs echoing in the empty room. As the weight of her confession settled in his chest, Joao felt a surge of desperation. He needed to know the truth, to silence the doubts that had begun to fester within him. "I need to take a DNA test, Maria," he whispered, almost to himself. "I need to know if they're mine." Maria's eyes widened, the fear in them palpable. "João, please, don't do this. It will only hurt more." But he was resolute, the quest for the truth igniting a fire within him. "I have to. I can't live in this uncertainty any more." As he turned away, the gravity of the moment weighed heavily on both their hearts, the path ahead shrouded in shadows of doubt and betrayal. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow over the kitchen where João stood, his heart racing as he waited for the call from the clinic. The air was filled with the aroma of fresh coffee, but it did little to calm the storm brewing inside him. He leaned against the counter, his mind racing with thoughts of the DNA test he had taken the day before. The results were supposed to bring clarity, but all they had done was deepen his anxiety. He glanced at the clock, willing the seconds to pass more quickly. Just then, the phone rang, piercing through the silence. João's heart skipped a beat as he hurried to answer. "Hello?" he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Mr. Silva? This is Dr. Mendez from the clinic," a calm voice replied, but the gravity in her tone made his stomach drop. "I have the results of your DNA test. We need to discuss them." "Discuss them?" he echoed, trying to mask the tremor in his voice. "Is something wrong? Please come to the clinic as soon as possible. It's important we talk in person." With that, she ended the call, leaving João reeling. He felt as if the ground beneath him had shifted, and an overwhelming sense of dread washed over him. "João, are you okay?" Maria's voice pulled him from his spiraling thoughts. She entered the kitchen, a worried expression on her face. "You look pale." "I just got off the phone with the clinic," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They want me to come in." Maria's eyes widened, and she stepped closer, concern etched on her features. "What did they say?" "They didn't say much. Just that we need to talk." He could see her processing the information, and he felt a wave of anger rise within him. "Maria, what did you do? Why didn't you tell me about this sooner?" "I was going to, I swear," she stammered, her hands trembling slightly. "I thought it would be fine. I thought—" "Thought what?" "That I wouldn't care." His voice rose, echoing in the small kitchen. "You've kept this from me for almost 20 years. How can I just ignore that?" "It was a mistake, João. A moment of weakness," Maria pleaded, tears brimming in her eyes. "I thought we were past it. I didn't want to hurt you." "Past it?" he scoffed, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "You think I can just forget about this? About everything? I need to know the truth. If I'm not their father—" "Stop, please," Maria interrupted, her voice rising with desperation. "You are their father. You've raised them. That's what matters." "Is it?" he shot back, his heart racing. "What if I'm not? What if everything I thought I knew about our family is a lie?" Maria looked down, her voice barely a whisper. "I made a choice, João. It was a choice I thought would protect us." "Protect?" he echoed incredulously. "You think lying is protection? I can't believe this. I need to go. I need to know what the clinic has to say." As he stormed out of the kitchen, he could feel Maria's eyes drilling into his back, filled with a mixture of guilt and fear. The drive to the clinic seemed to take an eternity. Each red light felt like an accusation, each passing car a reminder of the life he thought he had. When he finally arrived, the sterile smell of antiseptic hit him like a wave. He approached the reception desk, his heart pounding in his chest. "I'm here for my results," he said, his voice strained. "Have a seat. Dr. Mendez will be with you shortly," the receptionist replied, her voice monotone. João sank into a chair, his mind racing with possibilities. What if the test confirmed his worst fears? Would he still be able to look at his children the same way? What would he even say to Maria? The door opened, and Dr. Mendez stepped in, her expression serious. "Mr. Silva, thank you for coming in." As he followed her into the small consultation room, he felt a knot tighten in his stomach. The moment he had dreaded was finally here, and he braced himself for the upheaval of everything he had ever known. João stood in the dimly lit living room, the air thick with tension as he faced Maria, his heart pounding in his chest. The walls, once a sanctuary, now felt like a prison filled with unspeakable truths. "I need to know everything," he demanded, his voice barely above a whisper, trembling with a mix of fear and anger. "What happened during that separation? Why didn't you tell me?" Maria's eyes glistened with tears, her face a canvas of regret and sorrow. She hesitated, biting her lip, as if weighing the gravity of her words. "João, it was a moment of weakness. I thought it was just a mistake. I didn't want to hurt you." Her voice cracked, and she looked away, unable to meet his gaze. João clenched his fists, the memories of their life together flooding his mind. Picnics at the park, bedtime stories, the laughter of their children echoing in the hallways. "A moment of weakness? You had my children with another man. How can you call that a mistake?" The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. "I didn't think it would matter. You were so distant during that time," she pleaded, her voice rising in desperation. "We were apart, João. I thought we wouldn't make it back to each other." The admission hung heavy between them. João turned away, his back to her as he struggled to compose himself. "You could have told me the truth. I deserved that, at least." Maria stepped closer, her voice softening. "I was scared. I thought you would leave me. I thought you wouldn't want our children if you knew." João felt the weight of her words, the truth settling in his gut like lead. "But you lied to me for years. You let me raise children that aren't even mine." He turned to face her, his eyes ablaze. "I feel like a fool, Maria. How could you do this?" "I wanted to protect our family," she replied, her voice breaking. "I thought if I could keep it hidden, we could hold on to what we had." "Protect? This isn't protection. This is deception. What do I tell them?" João's voice rose in fury, echoing off the walls. "They think I'm their father. They love me. How can I look them in the eye knowing that I am not?" Maria's shoulders sagged, and she covered her face with her hands, tears spilling between her fingers. "I never wanted this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you. I thought—" "You thought what?" João interrupted, the bitterness in his tone cutting through her. "That I'd be okay with this? That I wouldn't care? I'm losing everything, Maria." He stormed out of the house, needing to escape the suffocating reality of their shattered life. The night air was cool against his skin as he walked aimlessly through the neighborhood, his mind racing. As he approached the park, he spotted Pedro, his childhood friend, sitting on a bench, his expression a mix of concern and confusion. "João!" Pedro called out, rising to meet him. "What's wrong, man?" João sat down beside him, burying his face in his hands. "I found out I'm not their father, Pedro. None of them are mine." His voice was muffled, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. Pedro's eyes widened in shock. "What? How did that happen?" Maria had an affair during a separation. She was inseminated with another man's sperm. João's voice cracked as he spoke, each word a dagger to his heart. Pedro placed a comforting hand on his shoulder, the warmth of friendship a small comfort. "I'm so sorry, João. That's terrible. What are you going to do?" "I don't know," João admitted, his voice breaking. "I love those kids. They're my life. But how can I stay? How can I pretend everything is normal when it's not? Think about the kids, Pedro urged gently. They need you. You've been their father, no matter what the biology says. João stared into the distance, watching the shadows dance in the moonlight. I just don't know if I can face them or Maria again. Everything feels so broken. As the weight of his turmoil pressed down on him, he felt a flicker of hope amidst the darkness. Perhaps his love for his children could guide him through this storm, but the thought of returning home filled him with dread. Later that night, as he gathered his thoughts in the quiet of his room, he stumbled upon the family photo album tucked away on a shelf. Flipping through the pages, memories flooded back. Their wedding, the births of their children, smiles frozen in time. But as he turned to the last few pages, a small envelope slipped out, catching his attention. Carefully, he opened it, revealing a letter that hinted at a deeper family secret involving his own father. The words danced before his eyes, and he felt a chill run down his spine. What had he stumbled upon? The revelation was like a whisper in the dark, suggesting that the tangled web of secrets and lies extended far beyond Maria's betrayal. As he held the letter, uncertainty gripped him. What more had he yet to uncover? João stood outside his father's house, the weight of unspoken truths pressing heavily on his chest. The sun was setting, casting a golden hue over the neighborhood, but it did little to warm his heart. He hesitated before knocking, memories of a fractured relationship flooding his mind. The last time they spoke, he was a young man full of dreams, and his father's harsh words had cut deep. Now, he needed answers, answers that had eluded him his entire life. As he rapped his knuckles against the wooden door, he felt his pulse quicken. The door creaked open, revealing his father, a weary man with lines etched deeply into his skin. "João." His father's voice was a mix of surprise and apprehension. "What are you doing here? Can we talk?" João's voice was steadier than he felt inside. His father stepped aside, allowing João to enter. The living room was filled with the familiar scent of old books and leather. João felt a pang of nostalgia, but it quickly morphed into resentment. "I need to know the truth," he said, his tone sharp as he took a seat on the worn-out couch. "What truth?" His father crossed his arms, a defensive posture that João recognized all too well. "About my mother, about my family. I found out some things." João's throat tightened as he struggled to articulate his thoughts. "I learned I'm not the father of my children. Maria, she inseminated with someone else's sperm. I don't even know who I am anymore." His father's expression shifted from defensiveness to something akin to guilt. "I can't help you with that, João. You need to talk to your wife." "Your silence is complicity." João shot back, anger coursing through him. "You've kept secrets. Did you know about this? Did you know I didn't know about the kids. But I knew about your mother," his father interrupted, his voice low and strained. "I had my doubts about who you really are." "What do you mean?" João leaned forward, his heart racing. "What did she tell you?" "Your mother. She had a past, João. A complicated one. I always thought you were my son, but there were whispers. I wasn't the only one who thought so. You need to understand that family doesn't always mean blood." "Just tell me," João shouted, frustration boiling over. "What are you hiding?" His father took a deep breath, his shoulders sagging as if the weight of his secrets was finally too much to bear. "Your mother had a relationship before me. A brief one. I always suspected that you might not be mine." João's mind reeled. "So, all this time, I've been living a lie? What about my identity? Everything I believed in?" "I didn't want to break you," his father said softly. "But now, it seems the truth is unraveling anyway. You deserve to know who you are." "Who am I?" João whispered, the words tasting bitter on his tongue. What does that even mean anymore? Listen, son, his father said, his voice trembling. It's not about blood. It's about who you choose to love and how you raise your children. They need you now more than ever. Do they? João replied, his voice breaking. How can I face them knowing that I'm not even their biological father? They'll see me as a stranger. Only if you let them, his father urged. You are their father in every way that matters. You've raised them, loved them, sacrificed for them. That's what counts. For a moment, silence enveloped the room. João's mind was a whirlwind of emotions, betrayal, anger, confusion, but beneath it all, a flicker of hope began to emerge. Maybe he could still be the father his children needed. Maria, she's been begging for forgiveness, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. She wants to help me uncover the truth. Then let her, his father suggested. You need to face this together. It won't be easy, but it's the only way to heal. João nodded slowly, feeling the weight of his father's words. I don't know if I can forgive her. It's a process, João. Take it one step at a time. You don't have to have all the answers right now. With a heavy heart, João rose from the couch. Thank you for being honest with me. He turned to leave, glancing back at the only man who had ever been a father to him. I'll figure this out. As he walked out into the evening air, the sun dipped below the horizon, leaving him in twilight. João felt a mixture of resolve and uncertainty, ready to confront the challenges ahead, not just for himself, but for his family. The air in the small cafe felt thick with tension as João sat across from Maria and the enigmatic figure from her past, a man named Ricardo. The dim lighting cast shadows across their faces, highlighting the strain etched into João's brow. He had been dreading this moment, yet the urgency of truth compelled him to face it head-on. Maria's eyes were a mix of fear and remorse, and Ricardo, calm and collected, seemed to hold the key to the secrets that had shattered João's world. Thank you for meeting with us, João began, his voice steady but laced with emotion. I need to understand everything. Why did it take so long for you to come forward, Ricardo? Ricardo leaned back in his chair, his gaze unwavering. It wasn't my place to interfere in your family's life, João. But the deception, it was never meant to hurt you. Maria and I made choices years ago that have led us to this moment. João clenched his fists, the anger bubbling beneath the surface. Choices? You mean the choice to lie to me for nearly 2 decades? To raise children that aren't mine? João, please, Maria interjected, her voice trembling. I never wanted any of this. I thought I could protect you, protect our family. Protect us? Or protect yourself? João shot back, his words sharp as a knife. You kept everything from me, Maria. You let me raise children I thought were mine, and now I find out that you used another man's sperm during a time when you were supposed to be with me. Ricardo cleared his throat, breaking the escalating tension. The man you're referring to, he's not just a stranger. He was your best friend, Pedro. The name hung in the air like a thunderclap. João's mind raced, memories flashing before him of laughter-filled nights, the bond they shared. Pedro? No, it can't be. Why would you do this? He turned to Maria, searching her face for answers. You were with him? My best friend. Maria's eyes brimmed with tears, and she nodded slowly. It was a mistake, João. I was confused, and during that separation, I didn't know what to do. When I found out I was pregnant, I thought I could just put it behind me. I thought we could have a normal life. Normal? João echoed, his voice rising. You think this is normal? I've spent my entire life believing I was someone I'm not. I dedicated myself to a family that is built on lies. João, listen, Ricardo interjected, his tone softer now. The past cannot be changed, but what you have with those children is real. They love you, and they don't know the truth. You have the power to decide how this story ends. Decide. Joao's voice cracked, anguish spilling over. You think I can just pretend everything is okay? I need to tell them. They deserve to know who I am, who their real father is. Maria shook her head, panic rising in her voice. No, please don't do that. They'll be devastated. They love you as their father. We can figure this out together. Together. João scoffed. You've shattered my trust. How can I look at them and not feel the weight of this deception? I can't carry this burden alone anymore, Maria. Silence enveloped the table as the gravity of Joao's words settled in. Ricardo shifted uncomfortably, glancing between the couple. It's a difficult road ahead, but perhaps it's time for honesty. The children deserve to know the truth, and so do you. Joao took a deep breath, feeling the walls of his carefully constructed life begin to collapse around him. Then it's settled. I will tell them. I owe them that much. But understand, Maria, this isn't just about you and me anymore. It's about rebuilding a foundation of honesty for our family, no matter how painful it may be. As he looked into Maria's tear-streaked face, Joao felt an unexpected sense of liberation. The truth was a heavy burden, but it was also a path toward healing. It was time to reclaim his identity, to confront the betrayal that had defined their lives, and to guide his children through the storm that was about to unfold. In that moment of clarity, a flicker of hope ignited within him, a hope that perhaps, through honesty, they could forge a new beginning, even amidst the wreckage of their past.